Alien girl asked the human to hold her lantern, but what it recorded changed the night entirely. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. James Mitchell wasn't quite sure how he ended up in this situation. A few hours ago, he was merely surveying the new alien world on an exploratory mission, but now here he was, standing at the edge of a mist-filled forest on an unfamiliar planet, holding a glowing lantern for an alien girl he had only just met. The soft, ethereal light cast strange, dancing shadows on the trees around them. The night was cold, the air thin, but there was something almost calming about it, the kind of stillness that made you want to stay just a little longer. He turned to look at her, the girl standing close by with her eyes locked on the lantern in his hand. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen before. Her skin was a deep shade of blue, her eyes glowing bright yellow like two suns set within the most delicate porcelain face. Her hair flowed in the breeze, a luminous silver, and her graceful, almost fluid movements made her appear more like a dream than a person. "Can you hold it a bit higher?" she asked, her voice soft, almost musical. James nodded, lifting the lantern higher. It was a simple thing, but in this strange world, it seemed to hold more significance than he could comprehend. "Is it really necessary to carry this?" he asked, trying to make light of the situation. "I mean, it's just a lantern." She smiled, a quiet, almost mysterious smile. "You'd be surprised at how much this little lantern means to us," she replied cryptically. James was about to ask her more when the ground beneath them suddenly trembled. It was barely noticeable, just a slight quiver of the earth beneath their feet, but enough to make him glance around. The girl didn't seem alarmed, though. She simply looked up at him, her face softening. "Thank you," she said, as though it was something much deeper than just holding a lantern. The silence between them was comfortable, but James couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen, something big. As the moment stretched on, he became acutely aware of the device in his hand, the lantern. What was it about this light that made her so insistent? He didn't know, but he could feel it now. The air around them had thickened, and even the trees seemed to hold their breath. He turned back to the girl, but she was no longer looking at him. Instead, her eyes were focused on the lantern's glow, and there, in the soft light, a faint, shimmering ripple appeared. It was subtle, but James noticed it immediately. The light from the lantern didn't just illuminate the forest around them. It was starting to record something he couldn't see, but the girl could. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "You see it, don't you?" she asked quietly. James felt his heartbeat quicken. What had started as a simple request to hold a lantern had just turned into something much more. "What is it?" he asked, his voice low. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she let the moment hang in the air between them, her gaze now intense, focused entirely on the glow in his hand. James felt it too now, the strange, pulsing energy that seemed to grow stronger with each passing second. "That's what we've been searching for," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "You found it." And then, everything changed. The air around them shimmered, the trees seemed to bend toward them, and the night, once so still, was now alive with energy. The lantern was no longer just a lantern. It had become something far more powerful, something capable of unlocking secrets that had been hidden for eons. And with that, James realized that this night, which had started out so simply, was about to change everything. What they had just uncovered together, what the lantern had recorded, would echo across their worlds for years to come. James stood still, his eyes fixed on the lantern in his hands, now glowing brighter than ever before. The strange, shimmering ripple in the air had grown stronger, its energy palpable, like a hum that vibrated through the very fabric of the night. Liara was still beside him, her face now soft with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. She looked at the lantern, then back at him, her golden eyes reflecting the light. "You felt it, didn't you?" she asked, her voice a gentle whisper that seemed to carry the weight of something ancient. James nodded slowly, still holding the lantern as it pulsed in his grasp. "I felt something, but I don't understand what's happening." Liara took a step closer, her gaze never leaving the lantern. "It's not just a light," she said softly. "It's a recording device, an artifact of our people, lost for centuries." James raised an eyebrow, still struggling to understand. "Recording device? What does it record?" "Everything," she replied, her voice almost reverent. "It captures moments, memories, energies, events that shape the world. It can reveal things that are hidden from sight." As if to prove her point, the lantern flickered, and a new image began to form in the air before them. It was subtle at first, like a shadow on the edge of his vision, but then it became clearer, a glowing figure, almost translucent, flickering like a hologram. It was a woman, with the same bright, glowing eyes as Liara, but her features were sharper, more regal. She stood alone in a vast, empty space, her hands held out as if she was reaching for something far beyond her. The image was so real that James could almost feel the weight of her gaze. He stepped back, startled. What is this?" "It's a memory," Liara explained, her voice thick with emotion. "A memory of my ancestors, a time long before my people were scattered across the stars. This lantern holds the history of my people, our triumphs, our failures, our losses. And now, it's recording what happens between us." James looked at her, unsure of how to react. The image before them flickered again, and the figure reached out, as if extending a hand to James. He felt a strange pull, as though the very fabric of reality was stretching toward him, urging him to make contact. "You must hold it," Liara said, her voice trembling slightly. "You are part of this now. The lantern has chosen you." James hesitated for a moment, unsure of the consequences, but then, something deep inside him urged him to act. He extended his hand, slowly, cautiously, and touched the lantern's edge. The moment his fingers brushed against it, a surge of energy coursed through him, unlike anything he had ever felt before. It was warm, yet electric, and it flooded his senses, filling him with an overwhelming sense of connection. The image of the glowing woman seemed to react, her figure shifting slightly, as if recognizing his touch. Liara's breath caught in her throat. "It's working," she whispered. "The lantern has never done this before." James pulled his hand back, heart racing. "What is it showing me?" "It's showing you me," she said, her voice barely audible. "My people, and now you." James looked at her, his mind racing. The lantern wasn't just showing him ancient memories. It was showing him something alive, something that was happening in the present, something that involved him. The woman's image in the lantern flickered again, and this time, James could see her face more clearly. Her eyes, like Liara's, seemed to burn with a strange intensity, and James felt as though they were staring directly into his soul. There was a message here, something he wasn't yet able to grasp, but he knew it was important for both him and Liara. As the image faded, James turned to Liara. "What does this mean? Why now?" She looked at him, her face filled with a mixture of awe and fear. "It means that you are part of something much bigger than either of us. Something that goes beyond this night, beyond this world." James felt a strange weight settle in his chest, the gravity of her words pulling him deeper into the mystery. "I didn't come here looking for any of this," he said, his voice low. "But now I'm part of it. Whatever this is." Liara nodded, her expression serious. "And whatever happens next, you won't be able to walk away. None of us will." The lantern flickered one last time, casting its soft glow over them both. The night had changed entirely, and there was no going back now. James could feel the weight of Liara's words sinking deeper into his chest, the strange energy from the lantern still vibrating in his hands. He looked around, the quiet forest now feeling heavier, the distant stars above seeming to watch with a knowing silence. The air was thick with unspoken thoughts. Everything had shifted in an instant, and he didn't know how to feel about it. "What happens now?" James asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would break the fragile moment they were sharing. Liara stood silently, her eyes reflecting the glowing light of the lantern. She took a deep breath, her face softening with a mix of confusion and resolve. "Now, we have to decide what to do with this. What the lantern recorded, what it means, it's all too much to understand right now." James couldn't take his eyes off her. Her expression was one of quiet determination, but there was something else, something raw that she was hiding behind her calm exterior. "What do you mean?" he asked, stepping closer. What exactly did it record? Liara hesitated for a moment, then met his gaze. It recorded possibilities, she said quietly. It showed something that could happen, something that might happen, but it's not certain. It's all connected to you now, James. He felt a shiver run down his spine at the mention of his name, the way she said it, almost like an anchor to a world he wasn't prepared for. But I don't know what it means, he admitted, his mind racing. Why me? I'm just a human. I didn't ask for any of this. She nodded, as though she understood the weight of his words. None of us ever ask for the things that find us, James, she said softly. But sometimes, it's not about asking. It's about being part of something bigger than we ever imagined. You're part of this now, whether you want to be or not. The lantern in his hands pulsed again, brighter this time, casting shadows that seemed to stretch and bend in the strange glow. James swallowed hard, the magnitude of the situation hitting him in waves. So what do we do now? He asked again, this time more firmly. Liara took another step toward him, her expression unreadable. Now, we wait, she said, and we figure out what this all means. The lantern won't show us everything at once, but it will show us enough. Enough to understand what needs to be done. James clenched his fists, his thoughts still swirling. You're asking me to just trust it? She smiled faintly, as though she had known that would be his next question. Yes, she replied. Trust the lantern, trust the path it's revealing for us. It's the only way forward. James took a deep breath, the air cold and sharp in his lungs. He didn't have all the answers, and he didn't know what was coming next, but one thing was clear, there was no turning back now. He had already taken the first step into something much bigger than himself. And Liara, she was right. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about them. It was about what the lantern had shown them both. And as he stood there, holding the glowing lantern in his hands, James realized that his life would never be the same again. He wasn't just a human anymore. He was part of something far greater. And no matter how uncertain or frightening that future seemed, he knew he couldn't walk away now. Not when Liara was counting on him. Not when the lantern was counting on him. James and Liara sat in the stillness of the alien forest, the strange lantern between them casting its soft glow, painting the world around them in eerie light. James had always felt a deep connection to nature, but this world, this new world, felt different. It wasn't just the strange landscape or the alien trees, but something about the air, the energy, the weight of the night itself, made everything feel charged, as if the very ground beneath him was alive. He glanced over at Liara, her eyes focused on the lantern, her face a mixture of determination and uncertainty. What happens now? He asked again, the question still echoing in his mind, unanswered. Liara turned to him slowly, as if contemplating her words before speaking. Now we find out what we're meant to do with this power, she said, her voice steady but tinged with something deeper, something James could almost touch. The lantern has shown us a glimpse, but there's more to it. It's up to us to interpret what it means and how it fits into the larger picture. James nodded, absorbing her words. It all felt too much to grasp. How could a simple lantern hold the key to something so profound? And how do we start? He asked. We start by understanding what we saw, Liara replied, her gaze fixed on the glowing light. We saw a memory, a part of my people's past. But there's more, something hidden, something we're meant to discover together. James felt a sudden weight settle over him. He was no longer just a visitor on this strange world. He was now tied to it in ways he couldn't yet understand. How do we even begin to unravel it? He asked, feeling the uncertainty creeping into his voice. Liara smiled, though it was faint, as if she understood his hesitation. We trust the lantern. We trust each other. The rest will come in time. James wasn't sure if he believed her fully, but there was something in the way she spoke that made him want to. Something in her eyes that told him he wasn't alone in this, no matter how impossible it seemed. You've been alone in this for a long time, haven't you? James asked softly, his voice barely a whisper. She glanced at him, surprised by the question, but then her expression softened. Yes, she admitted quietly. I've spent years searching for answers, for something to make sense of what's happened to my people. The lantern, this, she gestured to the glowing artifact between them. It's the first real clue I've had. But it's also a heavy burden. I can't do this alone. James nodded, his gaze steady. Then I'm with you, he said, his voice firm with a resolve he hadn't known he had. "I don't know what's coming next, but we'll figure it out. Together." Liara looked at him, her golden eyes softening, and for a moment, the silence between them felt like a promise. They were in this together. As the night stretched on, the lantern's glow seemed to pulse in response, almost as if it recognized their newfound resolve. It wasn't just a light anymore. It was a connection, a bridge between their worlds, and with every passing moment, it seemed to draw them closer to whatever destiny awaited them. James couldn't explain it, but he knew that from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same. They were no longer just two strangers from different worlds. They were part of something far bigger than either of them had ever imagined. The lantern was just the beginning. The days that followed felt like a blur to James. Every moment was filled with an almost overwhelming sense of purpose, yet a deep uncertainty lingered. Liara was by his side, guiding him through the strange landscape of this alien world, explaining the intricacies of her people's history and the purpose of the lantern. But despite her calm demeanor, James could sense the weight of it all pressing down on her. The lantern had shown them something both ancient and mysterious, but it was clear now that they hadn't even begun to understand its full power. Every night, the lantern's light pulsed brighter, and with it, the connection between them seemed to grow stronger. But with each passing day, the more they learned, the more questions arose. "Do you ever wonder what it means?" James asked one evening as they sat beneath the canopy of a glowing tree, its branches thick with bioluminescent fruit. Liara looked over at him, her golden eyes reflecting the soft light of the lantern. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice steady, though there was a slight tremor beneath the calm. "I mean, what this all means," James said, gesturing to the lantern in his hand, the glow casting strange, shifting shadows across his face. "I know what you told me about it. About the memory, about your people. But sometimes I wonder, why me? Why now? Why this?" Liara was silent for a long moment, and for a while, all they could hear was the soft hum of the alien wildlife in the distance. Then, with a deep breath, Liara spoke. "It's because the lantern didn't choose you randomly," she said quietly. "It's because of your humanity. My people, our people, are scattered across the stars. We've lost so much, so many things we can never get back. But you, humans, have something we don't, something we've forgotten. Your ability to rebuild, to grow even in the darkest of circumstances." James frowned, the weight of her words settling on him. "I don't feel like I've done anything special," he admitted. "I'm just a guy from Earth. I don't know how to help you, or your people, or even what I'm supposed to do with this lantern." Liara smiled, but it was bittersweet. "You don't have to do anything. Just be here. The lantern showed us what we needed to see. Now, it's about what we do next. Together." Her words were both a comfort and a challenge. James realized that the path ahead wasn't just about understanding the lantern's mystery. It was about what they could learn from each other, and what they could build together. As the night deepened, the stars above seemed to twinkle brighter than before, almost as if they were watching over them, guiding them on this strange journey. James felt something shift inside him. There was no going back now. They were bound by the lantern, by fate, by something far greater than he could understand. And for the first time, he didn't feel alone. He wasn't just a human on an alien world. He was part of something bigger, something he had yet to fully comprehend. But as he looked over at Liara, standing there with the glow of the lantern in her hands, he knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The days grew longer as James and Liara ventured deeper into the alien world. The landscape around them continued to astound James with its otherworldly beauty. Giant trees towered above, their trunks glowing faintly in the dim light, while flowers the size of his hand bloomed with colors he had never imagined. It was a world full of life, yet quiet, almost waiting for something. They had come to a clearing now, a spot Liara claimed had special significance for her people. "This is where we come to reflect," she said as she looked around the peaceful space, her voice soft. "The energy here is unlike anywhere else." James felt a subtle shift in the air, as if the very ground beneath them had a pulse. It was as if the world itself was alive, and for a brief moment, James could feel a deep connection to it. "How long has it been since you've been here?" he asked, watching Liara closely. She hesitated for a moment before answering, her eyes drifting toward the horizon. A long time, she said quietly. Since before the lantern's light showed us the way. James nodded, sensing the weight of her words. There was so much about her past, about her people, that she had yet to share. But he knew now wasn't the time to push. Instead, he focused on the present, on what they had just discovered together. The lantern had revealed something, but there was still so much to understand. Do you think we'll find the answers here? He asked, his voice low. Liara turned to him, her golden eyes reflecting the soft glow of the surrounding trees. The answers are always within us, she said, her voice filled with a quiet certainty. We just need to listen. She reached out, placing her hand on the lantern, her fingers brushing against its surface. James watched as the light pulsed gently in response to her touch, the air around them thickening once more with energy. It was as if the lantern had been waiting for her. It's not just a tool, she said, almost to herself. It's a connection, a bridge between our past and our future. James felt a chill run down his spine as he processed her words. The lantern wasn't just a physical object. It was something more, something deeper. And now, it had connected him to her people, and to something far larger than either of them. I don't know what's coming next, he admitted, his voice thick with uncertainty. But I'm ready to face it. With you. Liara smiled. A soft, genuine smile, the kind that spoke volumes without words. And I with you, James. There was a long silence between them, the kind that spoke of understanding, of two people who had been brought together by something beyond their control. They didn't need to say more. Together, they had already begun the journey, and they knew they would continue it, whatever the cost. The lantern pulsed again, brighter this time, as though it acknowledged their shared resolve. And in that moment, as the stars above them flickered in the night sky, James understood that their journey had just begun. The answers they sought were out there, waiting. And together, they would find them. The journey ahead seemed uncertain, but James felt a strange sense of peace as he walked beside Liara. They had spent days traveling through the alien landscape, moving deeper into uncharted territory, following the guidance of the lantern. It was no longer just a tool. It had become something more, something connected to both of them. Liara had explained more about the lantern's significance as they walked, speaking of ancient prophecies and forgotten histories. But there was still so much she kept to herself, as if some part of the truth was just out of reach. James had learned to be patient. The lantern, after all, seemed to have its own rhythm. It wasn't an object to be controlled, but something that worked in its own time. Every night, they camped beneath the stars, and the lantern's glow would shift, like it was revealing just a little more with each passing hour. But during the day, as they trekked through dense forests and rocky landscapes, the lantern remained quiet, its light only faintly pulsing in response to their movements. Do you think we'll find what we're looking for? James asked one morning as they stopped to rest. He wiped the sweat from his brow, glancing at Liara. She was studying the landscape ahead, her eyes narrowed in thought. We already have, she said softly. We've found each other. James was about to respond when a low hum vibrated through the air. The lantern, nestled between them, began to pulse brighter, its glow spreading like a ripple through the air. The change was sudden and unexpected, and James could feel a shift in the atmosphere. Liara's expression changed too, her eyes widening. It's time, she said, her voice tight with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. James felt his heart race as he looked at the lantern. The light intensified, and in that moment, it was as though the world around them was holding its breath. Without a word, Liara reached out, placing her hand on the lantern. It was as though the lantern recognized her touch, responding with even more intensity. Then, as if guided by some unseen force, the lantern's light shot out, forming a beam that shot into the sky, piercing the clouds above. James looked up, his breath caught in his throat. It felt as if they were witnessing something both ancient and new, something that had been waiting for them. The beam seemed to call to something, as though it was awakening something deep within the planet itself. What is it? James asked, his voice filled with awe. Liara's gaze was fixed on the light, her expression one of understanding and wonder. It's a beacon, she said quietly. A signal. It's calling to my people. The realization hit James like a wave. This was it. The lantern had led them to this moment, to this exact point in time. And now, they were ready to answer the call. As the light flickered and pulsed, James could feel the air thickening, the world around them shifting. He had no idea what would happen next, but in that moment, he knew one thing for certain. They were no longer just travelers on an alien world. They were part of something far bigger than themselves. And whatever came next, they would face it together. The light from the lantern grew brighter, casting long shadows that danced across the alien landscape. James stood in awe, watching the beams stretch high into the sky, as though reaching for something far beyond their world. The air was thick with anticipation, charged with an energy that vibrated through his body. He could feel it, that connection, that pull towards something unknown, yet undeniably important. Liara stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the light, her expression a mixture of wonder and determination. "This is it," she whispered, more to herself than to James. "We've been waiting for this." James didn't know what to say. He had no idea what was happening, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just a signal. It was a calling, a message from something deeper than they could yet understand. The lantern had done its part, guiding them to this moment, but now it was up to them to follow where it led. The beam of light seemed to pulse, as though alive, each pulse sending waves of energy rippling outward, touching everything in its path. James could feel it in his bones, a deep vibration that resonated with something inside him, something he didn't yet have the words to describe. Liara turned to him, her golden eyes glowing in the lantern's light. "We have to go," she said, her voice firm but soft. "It's time." James nodded, his heart racing. He had no idea what lay ahead, but he knew they had to move forward. There was no turning back now. Together, they set off toward the source of the light, the ground beneath them humming with energy as they walked. The forest around them seemed to part, the trees shifting slightly, almost as if guiding them forward. The air grew warmer, the atmosphere thick with an energy that James couldn't quite explain. The path before them was unclear, but it didn't matter. The lantern had shown them the way. Liara led the way, her steps sure and steady, her focus unwavering. James followed closely behind, his mind racing with questions, but also a sense of calm that he couldn't shake. It was as if everything was falling into place, like they were meant to be here, meant to follow this path. After what felt like hours, they reached a clearing. In the center, a massive stone structure stood, ancient and worn by time, yet still standing tall and proud. The light from the lantern was now almost blinding, pouring into the structure, illuminating it from within. James couldn't help but stare at the sight before him. The stone was covered in intricate carvings, symbols he couldn't understand, but there was a familiarity to them, as though they held the key to everything they had been searching for. Liara stepped forward, her eyes locked on the structure, a look of reverence crossing her face. "This is it," she said softly. "The place where my people's history was written. The heart of everything." James felt a shiver run down his spine. He had no idea what was about to happen, but he knew this was the moment that would change everything. Together, they stood before the ancient structure, the lantern between them, glowing brighter than ever before. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for them to take the next step. And as the light pulsed one final time, James knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The answers were waiting, and with the lantern's guidance, they would uncover them. The journey was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. James and Liara stood before the ancient structure, the glow from the lantern now brighter than ever, filling the clearing with an otherworldly light. The stone walls, covered in mysterious carvings, seemed to hum with energy, as though the very air around them was alive. James felt the pulse of the lantern in his chest, its rhythm now syncing with his own heartbeat. The ground beneath him vibrated faintly, and the air seemed to thicken with anticipation. "This is it," Liara said quietly, her voice filled with reverence. "The place where everything began." James looked at her, his heart racing. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Liara's eyes never left the stone structure as she stepped forward, her hand gently brushing against the carvings. "We unlock it," she said softly. "The answers are here, waiting for us." James followed her, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had no idea what they were about to uncover, but the sense of purpose he felt now was undeniable. He placed his hand on the stone next to Liara's, the cool surface sending a shock of energy through him. The moment their hands touched the stone, the lantern pulsed once more, its light becoming blinding for a fraction of a second. The ground beneath them shifted, and the massive stone doors slowly began to creak open, revealing a dark, vast chamber beyond. The air smelled ancient, filled with dust, and the faint scent of something long forgotten. "It's opening," James whispered, his voice filled with awe. "How?" Liara's gaze was fixed on the doorway, her eyes wide with wonder. "The lantern guides us," she said softly. "It always has." The doors continued to move, slowly, revealing more of the chamber inside. As the last of the stones shifted away, they stepped forward, entering the dark space. The lantern's light illuminated the walls, revealing more intricate carvings and symbols, each one more complex than the last. It was as if the history of Liara's people had been written on every surface. "This is incredible," James breathed, his voice full of wonder. "What is this place?" Liara stepped closer to one of the walls, her fingers tracing the markings. "This is the heart of our history," she said softly. "This is where we were born, where our ancestors first gathered. This is where everything was recorded." James looked around, the weight of her words sinking in. The carvings seemed to tell stories of ancient battles, of starships and journeys across galaxies. He could feel the presence of something powerful in the air, something that had been lost to time. "It's like a memory," he murmured, his eyes scanning the walls. "Like everything here is a piece of your past." Liara nodded, her expression somber. "Yes," she said softly. "It's more than that, though. It's a record of who we are, what we once were, and what we can still become. The lantern led us here for a reason. We are the key." James felt a chill run down his spine. The enormity of what they were standing in front of hit him all at once. This place held the answers they had been seeking, but it also held the weight of an entire people's history, their legacy. And now, it was their turn to uncover what had been lost. Liara turned to him, her eyes filled with a quiet resolve. "We've found the beginning," she said. "Now, we need to find the end." James nodded, his heart pounding. Together, they stepped deeper into the chamber, the lantern's light casting their shadows on the ancient walls, and the journey they had started so long ago finally beginning to unfold before them.